Hey folks, today I want to share the concept of the self-fulfilling prophecy and how there's a significant amount of truth to this when it comes to the science of how our brains operate. And I want to start off by sharing a personal story of mine back from high school when I used to play basketball. And we were going up against the best basketball team in the city with one of the best players in the city. His name was Carlos. He was a shorter guy, absolutely phenomenal when it came to playing basketball. He did a whole bunch of tricks. He could make plays, make passes, and he had amazing ball handling skills. And when I went into that game, freaked out. I went into the game thinking that this guy is way too fast. And I was guarding him because he was a point guard for his team. I was a point guard for my team, and traditionally point guards guard each other. So I was guarding him, and I knew what this kid could do, because we played street ball against him and his friends a number of times, and they just absolutely whooped us. And so going into this official league game, I was a little bit terrified, and he proved me to be right and created what we talk about here when it comes to self-fulfilling prophecy. He was way too fast for me. He was blowing by me. He was making plays. He essentially made me look like a fool, and he was taking their team in terms of, from a scoring perspective, just completely outscoring us. And during halftime, I still remember this. The coach walked into the locker room, and he basically looked at me and said, "Pradeep, what is happening here? This guy is making you look like an absolute fool. What are you doing?" And I remember saying to him, "Coach, he's just way too fast." And then he looked at me, he said, "Pradeep, if you think he's too fast for you, he is." And at that moment, I got the lesson. I understood what he was trying to say, and I completely changed my perspective. I changed my prophecy from, you can say, him being too fast to, I'm just as fast, if not faster than him. And what ended up happening was the second half of the game, I played probably the best defense I've ever played in my entire life. And I absolutely contained him to the point where he wasn't able to blow by me. He wasn't making the passes that he traditionally could make. And basically the team scoring went down because I had him absolutely contained to the point where he was frustrated. He was visibly frustrated with my ability to defend him. And it was incredible because at the end of the game here, we didn't win, so that's not the lesson here. But at the end of the game, it was a huge moment for me of understanding this concept of self-fulfilling prophecy. Because when we believe something to be true, we actually create it ourselves. And I'm going to share why this is actually accurate when it comes to the brain and how the brain operates. But something even better happened during that game. At the end of the game, the coach came to me and said, "Pradeep, that was absolutely phenomenal. I have never seen a player guard another player that way." And he actually gave me, and so it wasn't him. And so at the end of the game, in this type of a league, the two coaches would get together and pick an MVP. And I got the MVP, even though our team didn't win, even though that I wasn't a huge scorer. They gave me the MVP for the game because I had contained the best player, one of the best players in the city. So this is why it's very important for us to understand how we determine our futures, because we create our own prophecies that become self-fulfilling. And they become self-fulfilling because our brain is constantly doing two things. Our brain, if you remember any of my previous podcasts, our brain is a goal or outcome-driven organ. What that fundamentally means is that it strives to achieve that outcome. But here's the catch. For it to strive to achieve that outcome, it's constantly doing two things. It's constantly predicting, and it's constantly problem solving. And so most people think that the environment creates or influences our reactions. But here's what studies of the brain have actually determined. Studies of the brain and the nervous system. Our brain and nervous system are already primed. We have a default state, and our brain and our nervous system is already primed by our thoughts before we get into a particular environment. What does that mean? That means that our brain is ready. It's already, you can say, basing an outcome based on our thoughts before we actually get into the actual situation or scenario. This is why players do a pre-session exercise or a pre-game routine to get their brains primed to that level of success, of winning before they actually get into the environment or the competition or the game itself. And this is important because our neurons, so our brain cells that are responsible for sending electrical impulses through to each other, and there's neurotransmitters in there as well, which are basically chemicals or molecules. But all of these elements of our brain work together in unison based on our thoughts. And our thoughts can prime our brain to be more effective. So let me just simplify this. This essentially means that you create your own outcomes. You are primed to create your own outcomes based on the thoughts before you go into a situation. So it's not the situation itself that determines your reaction. It's more of how you actually prime yourself before you get into that situation. And studies have shown this over and over again. And so this is extremely powerful. And this directly relates to the concept of the self-fulfilling prophecy. You will create your future based on how you prime yourself before you get into that situation. And that's fundamentally what I want to leave you with here today. Because when I work with individuals, one of the things I hear quite a bit is, oh, that's going to be a huge challenge, or that's going to be a huge problem, or I'm not good at that, or I'm not going to be good at that. And my first question is, how do you know that? Because you're creating that yourself. If someone says to me, oh, that's going to be a problem, before it's actually a problem, yes, it's going to be a problem. So we create a lot of times problems in our own mind that become reality because we move our brains, our thoughts in that direction, and that's how our mind and our body actually respond. So we've actually created that future that we didn't want. We've created that challenge that may not have been a challenge there in the first place. And I'm not saying downplay challenges. I'm not saying don't look at future scenarios where there's problems and challenges. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is prime your body and your brain to be able to overcome those challenges and do not create challenges that don't exist. Because many of us, whether that's in business, whether that's within our own health, whether that's in our own relationships, we create these problems. And we create scenarios in our own mind that we eventually play out to be reality. So to bring it back and simplify this is if you're going to create a self-fulfilling prophecy, create one that empowers you, right? Like I'm able to be just as fast, if not faster, than Carlos and contain him and defend him, as opposed to a prophecy that is disempowering, the one that I had the first half of the game where I thought he was way too fast for me. If you can apply that to more of the situations in your life more frequently and more consistently, you are going to outperform yourself and get better and better every single day.